I started the Institute for one reason, the Institute. I started it as a public-facing persona to disclose anti-gravity technology through, because I told Mark this. If you stick your neck out in public, at least someone notices if your head gets chopped off. If you stick your neck out in private, they will bury you. They will burn down your house while you're sleeping in your bed, and it won't even make the news. That's why the Institute exists.
What's up YouTube, Gemini Johnny back again with another compilation of some of the wildest conspiracy theories I can find. Well, one to be exact, because we're doing things a little bit differently today. It's actually going to be a conspiracy theory of my own. But instead of me sitting here just blabbering at you, I figured I could show you some TikToks and walk through how I got there. I think it might be interesting to see if any of you can come to the same conclusion as I did. But I will be sure to tell you at the end of the video, don't worry. And I think in a way it ties together a lot of the conspiracy theories we see today. So first we're going to talk about gravity and anti-gravity. And to do that, we're going to be basing it off of this slideshow. Amy Eskridge is a woman who started a Huntsville-based father-daughter company with expertise in gravity modification research and development. She started a gravity research company with her dad, who turns out he was a former NASA engineer. And many of you may recognize Huntsville as a name that pops up a lot in these types of videos, but I'll let Amy tell you about that.
People don't know what Huntsville is. Huntsville is the biggest fucking deal on the planet that you have never heard of. No, it is. No, like Huntsville is the Silicon Valley of government national security technology.
And we will be using Amy's slideshow for a reason, but we'll get back to that. And as we go through this, you'll notice a lot of it is what you might call above my level of intelligence. So I'm not going to sit here and pretend to know what this all means. So I found some TikToks that might help us explain it a little bit better. And this first video is coming to us from Henry Belcaster, Belcaster. So we'll give him a follow because it's a really interesting video.
This guy invented gravity, but how? It was a sunny 1666 day, Woolsthorpe, England. This scholar, Isaac Newton, sitting under a tree, K-I-S-S-I-N. Sign, heavy apple there. Why does it decide to fall and bump me as opposed to going upward or laterally? Why, I'll call this mystical power gravity. In the ground I'm sitting, he must have lots of air. Newton realized that every object that has mass exerts an invisible gravitational force on every other object, and it just so happens that Earth has a lot of mass, so things stick to it. It's the same reason planets stick around the sun and why the moon doesn't float away. But if gravity's equal everywhere, why does an apple fall to the ground faster than a feather? Well, with Earth's atmosphere, wind particles cause the feather to float and flitter while an apple cannonballs through the air. But on the moon with no windy atmosphere, gravity is proved constant.
I thought that was a fun little explanation about Isaac Newton and the discovery of gravity, or as, you know, I should say, the official story of the discovery of gravity. Also, I should point out here, technically it's still a theory. Scientists are still working to prove that it's actually true, and it probably is, but, you know, the nature of science could be wrong. But to define it officially, gravity is a fundamental physical force that is responsible for interactions which occur between particles, between aggregations of matter such as stars and planets, and between particles such as photons and aggregations of matter that is 10 to 39 times the strength of the strong force. And that extends over infinite distances, but is dominant over macroscopic distances, especially between aggregations of matter. Get all that? And anti-gravity is reducing, canceling, or protecting against the effect of gravity. Oh, there you go. The basics: Copernicus published the theory of heliocentricity in 1543. But once again, I got you a TikTok. I know people have their feelings about Neil deGrasse Tyson, but, you know, telling the story of Copernicus. Give him a break.
Here's what's interesting. Copernicus says, let's put the sun in the middle. Epicycles, even after he did that, were more accurate predicting the positions of the planets than his heliocentric model did. Because he presumed that the almighty creator of the universe, so he presumed if God made the universe, what's the most perfect geometric shape? Circle. Planets are clearly moving in perfect circles. Why would God make it move in any other shape?
Because God is perfect.
Exactly. And a circle is perfect. Exactly.
Yeah, makes sense.
So invoking deity as a motivating force for his scientific thinking. It's not in perfect circle. That's why he wasn't getting the right answer. It would be another 50 years before Kepler, German mathematician, using data from Tycho Brahe, a master observer of the night sky, and data on where all the planets were and everything. And after tortuously scratching his head over what it all meant, he finally landed on the fact that planets orbit in ellipses rather than in perfect circle.
This one is from Jake Explains, with one E in the middle of Jake and Explains. Not like three E's, like there's an E between Jake and Explains. It's like the E at the end of Jake is also the E at the beginning of Explains. Did I explain that right? Jake's better at explaining things.
Copernicus figured out that the sun was at the center of the solar system, but what's crazy is he kept it secret for 30 years. Why? In the 1510s, he realized the planets orbit the sun and not Earth. but he waited until 1543 on his deathbed to publish his findings. He waited because his theory challenged the church, which taught that the earth was at the center of the universe. So he had a radical idea at the time, therefore he published at the end of his life to avoid backlash. At first, his book was ignored, but then it inspired Galileo, Kepler, and the scientific revolution. And eventually it reshaped our understanding of the cosmos forever.
I like his explanation better than Neil deGrasse Tyson. That's why his name is Jake Explains. Jake Explains. So, theory of heliocentricity. Bang. Got it. Johannes Kepler first described the laws of planetary motion in the early 1600s.
Kepler's law of planetary motion are three governing laws describing the motion of the planet in the solar system. These laws were formulated by the German astronomer Johannes Kepler in the early 17th century. Working with the precise astronomical data collected by Tycho Brahe, Kepler explained how planets actually move around the sun. These laws not only corrected the old circular orbit model of Copernicus, but also laid the foundation for Newton's law of gravitation. Let us talk about all the three laws one by one. First law. This law is also known as the law of ellipses. The path each planet follows around the sun is not a perfect circle, but an ellipse, which you can think of as a stretched circle. This is a picture of an ellipse. An ellipse has two special points called foci. For a planetary orbit, one of those foci is occupied by the sun. What that means in everyday terms is that when a planet revolves around a sun, it is sometimes a bit closer to the sun and sometimes a bit farther away, instead of staying at one fixed distance. Second law, this law is also known as the law of equal areas. If you draw an imaginary line from the sun to a planet and watch that line over an equal interval of time, the area it sweeps out is always the same for each equal time interval. For example, if in 10 seconds a planet moves from one point in its orbit to another, it sweeps out a certain area, say A1. Now, if the same planet is farther away and again takes 10 seconds to move between 2 points, the area swept by it, say A2, is exactly the same as A1. The practical consequence is that a planet does not travel at a constant speed. It moves faster when it is nearer the sun, because in the same time interval, distance covered is more and it is slower when it is farther away, just enough so that those area slices stay equal. Third law. This law is also known as the law of harmonies.
Okay.
It states that there is a simple mathematical relationship between how long a planet takes to complete one orbit and how far, on average, it stays from the sun. In simple terms, if T stands for the orbital period, which is the total time a planet takes to complete one full revolution around the sun, and R stands for the average distance of the planet from the sun, measured as the semi-major axis of its elliptical path, or this distance.
I'm not gonna lie, I didn't really get all that. That's the second time I've seen that video. I still don't understand how that second law, those slices are the same. That doesn't make any sense to me, but hey, way smarter people than me have figured this out, so what am I gonna say? Newton first published the universal law of gravitation in 1686. Math equation. Gravity follows an inverse squared relationship with force and distance. Math equation. And for good measure, take this one with a grain of salt. Duncan Trussell is a comedian who is a little wild, but, you know, I don't even know if he'll be able to use this, so probably get cut out.
This is Isaac Newton. He was a lunatic. He had mercury in his hair. He was studying the Temple of Solomon.
So he had mercury poisoning?
Mercury poisoning. And this is Newtonian physics. Look at Tesla. He's like on a date thinking about Faust, seeing a vision of like alternating current engine. These are the people who warped society permanently. There was nothing tame, domesticated, or normal about them. So it's just weird that this thing has emerged. Science is somehow like filled with just very normal, completely professional people when the history of it seems to be littered with maniacs.
And then Big Papa came along. Mr. Einstein published general relativity in 1916. And it was basically trying to, once again, I'm just gonna give you a TikTok. All right, this one comes to us from Sarah Adair 3. I'll put her thing on the screen.
One of the greatest quests in modern science is the search for a single framework that would unite all the forces of nature and explain anything from the expanding universe to the subatomic particles. Some of the most eminent physicists devoted their research to this. Einstein called it the unified field theory. He was hoping to compress the laws of nature into one elegant mathematical equation, maybe an inch long, one that would allow him, in his words, to read the mind of God. Einstein died and left his work unfinished. There's literally an image of his desk on the day he died, and his notebook is still open. And it makes you wonder, what could be so difficult that not even the great Einstein can solve it? Let's try to explore it in a way that's relatively simple. Every major scientific breakthrough, if you really think about it, has reshaped civilization. You have Isaac Newton and his discovery of the laws of motion and gravity, which built the foundations of classical mechanics. And this laid the groundwork for the Industrial Revolution. And then you have Michael Faraday and James Clerk Maxwell. The discovery of electricity and magnetism led to the age of electricity. So now you have the lighting of cities, you have the telegraph, radio. Next you have Einstein and the theory of relativity, E equals mc squared, which revolutionized our understanding of space, time, and energy. This transformed cosmology and laid the groundwork for nuclear power. Fusion and the power of stars was finally explained. Humanity entered the atomic age.
And this video does go on for another 13 minutes, so we won't be watching all of her video here today. By all means, go give her a follow. She does really good content, and give that video a like. It is from last year. It's only from September of last year, so you don't even have to scroll back that far. But yes, Einstein was a big deal. We all know that. That's why they make movies about him and stuff. What does relativity have to say? Gravity is a force or a deformation in space-time, question mark? Anti-gravity, impossible according to general relativity without negative mass. It basically means that for general relativity to be true, anti-gravity can't exist. Relativity and Newtonian gravity agree regarding negative mass generating a repulsive force, and the standard model of particle physics does not include negative mass. If I'm understanding this correctly, standard physics doesn't equate for anti-gravity. As of now, it's my belief that physics says anti-gravity doesn't exist. The unified field theory, which was Einstein's greatest work. 4 forces: gravity, graviton question mark, electromagnetism, the photon, strong, the gluon, and weak nuclear forces, W and Z bosons. The latter 3 are unified and gravity remains unexplained. Remember, we're going through this for a reason, and we will get back to it. Graviton postulated to be required to unify in 1934 by the Soviet physicists Dmitry Blokhantsev and F. Galperin, meaning if the graviton can be proven to exist, then it would unify all the fields, and unified field theory would be true. Gravity, ... Is it quantized?
What Einstein said was this: if you don't have anything out in space, that's a flat space. If you were to take a planet, a ball, whatever it is, a rocket ship, and roll it, it would make a straight line in that space-time. Watch it up on the screen. I roll it, and it makes a straight line. But according to Einstein, if you go and have a star, that star will bend space-time in that extra dimension that you can't see. So you can't see it bent up over there, but you can see it here. In that bent space-time, if you roll the ball, see, now it looks like it's going around and around that planet. So according to Einstein, there is no connection between the star and the planet. What you have is the star bending the fabric of space. And this little fabric pulls on that, which pulls on that, which pulls on that, which pulls on that. There is no action at a distance. There's only this pulling on the stuff right next to it. And then when the ball goes around and around, it's because of that curvature going around. Here's another thing he said, was that if you have a heavier star, a more massive star, and put it in, it's going to curve space-time even more. So watch this. It really looks like a planet going around a star. But once again, it's not because there is any connection. It's because there is an extra dimension that you can't see out in space. The star curves that extra dimension of space-time, and that curved space-time is what causes it to go around. This is Einstein's general theory of relativity, and it is how he explained why planets go around stars.
Makes sense. It does help to have a visual, I think, so I wanted to include that one too. Anti-gravity research in the early days. This is a fun little picture of people looking from down at Earth from outer space. Hopefully that's only in our future for good reasons. Brown's gravitator in the 1920s. So Thomas Townsend Brown, he's known for the Byfield-Brown effect. And of course, I don't know what most of this means, so I do have some TikToks for you. He coined the term electrogravitics, high voltages with asymmetric high dielectric fields, asymmetric capacitance. Vacuum tests supposedly rule out ion wind, and he made a patent in 1960 but was unsubstantiated. Alright, this creator is It's Jesse Michaels, or Michelle's maybe. It's Jesse, Jesse Michaels. I'm gonna just, I'm gonna throw it on the screen for you. He does really good content. Go give his stuff a like. He's got a full video on his YouTube channel, but be sure and follow him on TikTok too.
From the outside, Townsend Brown sort of looks like an amateurish mid-century physicist and failed inventor exploring the kooky world of anti-gravity. But what did Brown's work in anti-gravity have to do with UFOs? Well, his gravitator looked exactly like a flying saucer. And behind closed doors, Townsend Brown was obsessed with UFOs. He even created NICAP, the National Investigations Committee on Aerial Phenomena. When Townsend's daughter, Linda Brown, and his biographer requested the scientist's records from the Navy, they were at first very uncooperative, and then eventually they hinted that a lot of Brown's work was still classified. But why would Brown's work be classified if he was just a failed hack?
The National Secrecy Act prevented scientists like T. Townsend Brown from commercializing or even publicizing any technology which could potentially be interpreted as having a military application.
Well, we know from Schottkin's biography that Brown actually had meetings with the highest level officials in American atomic programs. People like Edward Teller, the father of the hydrogen bomb, and General Curtis LeMay, both deep insiders when it came to atomic secrets. Townsend Brown's daughter Linda even recalls that he was often taken home in a black Cadillac, driven by a man that she would eventually come to know as Robert Sarbacher. And where have we heard that mysterious name before?
Sarbacher, somebody purportedly involved in the stand-up of the stuff that I uncovered, right?
In the naval records that we do have, it shows that Brown was suddenly terminated by the Navy in 1942, with no explanation, despite strong performance. 2 weeks later, he mysteriously pops up as an employee at Martin Corporation in Burbank, just 50 miles from where Skunk Works is founded a year later by legendary aeronautical engineer Kelly Johnson. Skunk Works was created to house Martin's most advanced secretive work. Over 80% of its current projects are still classified. Is it a coincidence that Townsend Brown joined Martin Corporation a year before its founding?
I think not. So yeah, obviously, these guys are connected. This is working at energy at the highest levels of government and the most top secret programs. Nikola Tesla's space drive. One thing I do want to point out here is that this photo, often attributed to Nikola Tesla, is not actually by Nikola Tesla. This is based off of Nikola Tesla's work, and it's another artist that did an entire book. The book was called Occult Ether Physics by William K. Lyne, L-Y-N-E. You're welcome to look it up yourself. If I remember, I will put a link to the PDF in the description below. It's on page 66 of that book. It is a bummer because I always wished that Tesla had made a UFO, but he didn't. He did make a flying machine, which I will be happy to show you. Prepare yourselves. Nikola Tesla's apparatus for aerial transportation was filed on October 4th, 1927, and according to this, was approved on January 3rd, 1928. As you can see, not exactly a UFO. Looks like some sort of bicycle hybrid, mechanically operated helicopter type of thing that turns, whoop. I don't know, it's cute, but alas, not a spaceship. And this is something that Amy Eskridge must have been aware of, as you can tell by her including this photo on her slideshow. Patent 1655144, a space drive or electromagnetic propulsion system, electropulsation, dynamic theory of gravity. Matter is made up of whirls of ether, rejects the notion of curved space-time. So Tesla really trying to throw a wrench in the typical idea of what we had for physics. Then comes along the Gravity Research Foundation, founded by Roger W. Babson in 1948. The annual prize given away by the foundation was won by Stephen Hawking and 5 later Nobel Prize winners. And this is another video from Jesse Michael's YouTube channel, but that is Eric Weinstein, or Steen, not exactly sure how to say that. He is somebody who, I don't really know what his whole deal is. I don't know. You know what? He's got Epstein connections. He denies any wrongdoing. Don't they all? But he's one of these like intellectuals that's famous for some reason. He used to be the managing director for Teal Capital. That's the most sketchy thing about you, bro. But alas, he is often talking about UFOs and seems to put money into research about UFOs. And the guy across from him, that way, oh man, I don't, guy over there, other guy in the suit, and the gentleman on the other couch is Hal Puthoff, a former CIA UFO expert. I don't really know how else to put that.
A number of aerospace engineering companies were suddenly interested in anti-gravity, and that people like DeWitt on up and down, really top level physicists, were suddenly getting grants to look at the idea of anti-gravity. For example, the gravity essay came along.
From the Gravity Research Foundation in Boston.
Right. And so it looked like it was going to be a big explosion. But anyway, it all sort of quieted down. And I could take 2 implications of that, and that is it quieted down because nobody ever got anywhere, or it quieted down because they did get somewhere and it went black.
Bryce DeWitt quoted in his Gravity Research Foundation essay, "Before anyone can have the audacity to formulate even the most rudimentary plan of attack on the problem of harnessing the force of gravitation, he must understand the nature of his adversary. I take it as most axiomatic that the phenomenon of gravitation is poorly understood even by the best of minds, and the last word on it is very far indeed from having been spoken." And that was in 1953. And I had to look up what axiomatic meant, but it means containing aphorisms or maxims, or of or relating to or derived from. That doesn't help either. Evident without proof or argument. That's probably the best description we're going to find. Then comes along the government and contractor programs. We have the Aeronautical Research Laboratory, supposedly conducted research at the Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in 1956. And the Research Institute for Advanced Study conducted research that later became Lockheed Skunk Works, which we've heard of before, but let this jolly creator tell you about it. He doesn't look so jolly in that shot, does he? He is, trust me. His name is What.History. He does good content, so go give him a follow. I'm never going to give you any content that's not, well, actually, that's not true. I do the AI crap sometimes. Not I do the AI, but I'll use some of the AI TikTok. You know what I mean. Whatever. Anyway, this guy's funny. Let's check him out. This is a brief history of Lockheed Skunk Works.
Lockheed Martin Skunk Works is one of the most important military contractor. Lockheed Martin is obviously one of the biggest in the world, but the Skunk Works is so important. They've been rocking it since 1943, and they've been killing it ever since with all the most important technology you can think of. Their first aircraft, the F-80, was the first American-made jet fighter, and it saw some service during World War II. It never saw combat, but it was flying around Italy doing reconnaissance and prepared to take anybody out if it needed to. But it was quickly replaced by these other ones. They made the U-2 spy plane, which is awesome. The SR-71 Blackbird, the fastest aircraft of all time, super cool. They made the Nighthawk, the F-22, made the F-35. These guys have basically made all the coolest airplanes since World War II, and this place is super secretive. If you become an engineer and you are able to work there, the amount of background checks that you have to get to be able to work at the Skunk Works is insane.
Yeah, I've never known anybody who works at Skunk Works, but I did know a guy once who went on to work at JPL. I used to work with him at a restaurant. Doesn't matter. Back to the video. So yeah, just a quick brief history of also, yeah, they are cool in a sense, but also they're death machines. So I don't know if cool is the right way to put those, but you know. All right, so then comes along the Searle generator, 1946, claimed combination of anti-gravity and free energy device. Widely panned, still in development. And you know I don't know what that means, but it sounds really cool, so let's watch a TikTok about it.
Did you know in the 1940s, a man named John Searle created a flying disc that could reportedly travel over 1,000 miles per hour? The invention was called the Searle Effect Generator, or SEG. These early prototypes worked to produce electricity, but generated unexpectedly extremely high voltage, along with gravitomagnetism, even claiming that some of his early designs flew off into the sky and were lost due to the anti-gravity effect of the machine. John Searle was lost to time, a forgotten inventor. His Searle Effect Generator is finally getting some attention.
So what do you think? Starting to figure out my theory yet? If you think you've got it figured out, drop it in the comments. While you're there, give me a little thumbs up. I appreciate it. All right, back to the video.
In the 1960s, John Searle revealed a very intriguing device. It was built out of a combination of magnetics, copper rollers, and electromagnetic coils. He claimed that the electrons would gain velocity in a spiral pattern inside the magnetic field. With a certain RPM and phase offset that was claimed to produce an excess amount of power. Naturally, many followers attempted to replicate the device and its effects. One of the biggest replication projects stemmed from Washington Godwin, and they claimed to see a 7% reduction in weight as well. But the claim has yet to be verified, and there could have been offset vibrations in the machine that could have resulted in misinterpretations and weight change. The excess energy output also violates the first and second law of thermodynamics. Does the machine produce an anomalous effect, or is it just simply an overcomplicated motor?
I knew some of those words, but it does make me think of this. You guys remember these? What are they? Why were these everywhere for a minute? That's crazy. All right, back to the video. Next, we have the Dean Drive, and when you search Dean Drive on TikTok, it comes up with a lot of stuff for Supernatural because the main character's name is Dean, and it's him driving a lot. But it's a reactionless drive claimed to reduce propulsion without propellant exhaust. Linear oscillating mechanism, effect may be due to friction and would not work in free space. So we get the idea. It's a thing that creates motion. Then next comes the Wallace machine, 1968. A spinning brass discs, half integer nuclear spin, aligns nuclear spin, patents cite kinematic field as mechanism of action, and is unsubstantiated. And we all know what lathe-weight gyroscopes are, even if you've never heard them called that, because I had never heard the name lathe-weight before in my life, but I've always seen gyroscopes around. Eric Laithwaite invented maglev. The hypothesis was that rotating spinning disc creates a force orthogonal to both spin and direction. I don't know if you've ever been in one of those where you sit in it, but man, it feels crazy. Claims that mechanical kinetic forces can cause weight change, and Newton's second law explains this. Math equation. So try to read it. Q times E equals... I don't even know. What's H over P, kinda? Enough of that. And this is a video of Eric Laithwaite himself giving a video of his 40-pound gyro wheel.
This is an experiment with a spinning wheel. A rather large wheel, 13 inches diameter, mounted in a ball bearing on a shaft 3 feet long. I'm going to hold it like this and swing it in a circle and lift it with one hand, but only when it's spinning. First of all, let me weigh it to show you just how heavy it is. As I talk, you'll see that lifting it is quite an effort. It weighs about 40 pounds, and I can't lift it any higher than that. Whilst I'm doing it, I shall talk to you, so that you shall tell from my voice that I'm not under any stress of any kind. And the minute I shall let go with my left hand, and holding this remote end of the shaft only, I shall lift the wheel through 5 feet, all on its own with no effort on my part. All I do is apparently just to steer it along a path that it's already decided it would like to go. Then there's the question how you stop the wheel.
It's a good way to stop a wheel. I don't know, I thought that was interesting. Another visual for us. And we'll do one more for good measure.
In this case, the motion of the spinning wheel, we call that precession. going to torque exactly as you see on the picture there. You ready? I stop the torque. Nothing happens. I torque backwards. I keep torquing. I feel it in my hand. I really have to push.
Interesting.
I keep torquing. I stop torquing.
All right, now getting into the good stuff. Anti-gravity research, modern efforts. This is an alleged UFO video. The Mansfield Amendment of 1973 restricted research by the Department of Defense for non-military applications. So basically, if it didn't have a military application, it wasn't allowed to be researched. This included anti-gravity research. This means most modern anti-gravity research has been outsourced to the private sector and/or black budgets, which is where people like skunkworks come in. Then, in the 1970s, they discovered the Hutchison effect, anomalous effects noted while attempting to recreate the Tesla experiments, claims of the Philadelphia experiment reproductions, and loss of ability. I don't exactly know what she meant by that last one, but I have some TikToks for you. And this is a little bit older footage, but it does explain the Hutchison effect, and it has John Hutchison in the video. I don't remember why, but I recognize him from somewhere, so you guys may too. And if you know what it's from, then please put it in the comments, because it's been bugging me.
Objects and a million pieces just fly apart.
In fact, using only 75 watts of energy, enough for a small light bulb, Hutchison made a 60-pound cannonball rise off the table. It would also fuse dissimilar materials, heat metal but not burn the wood it sat on, shatter metal as well as change its crystalline structure. This was something to write home about.
Beginning of 1980, experimenting with all the electromagnetics and electrostatic equipments I had at the time, I started to notice some very, very unusual effects, such as a room being filled up very quickly with multicolored lights, steel bars sitting on wood and not causing any fires, metal turning to jelly, things levitating and jumping off to the ceiling, or simply go up, hover, and then fall back down.
Crazy.
Dubbed by some as the poltergeist machine, there is no one machine, just a lot of old army surplus gear, randomly tuned by John. No one knows how it works. John has apparently figured out the right combination of radio waves and electrical energy to create the effect. If it could be proven, its impact would be huge. You'd have to rewrite most of the science textbooks.
Revolutionize the planet. If you can build a zero-point energy reactor about the size of your microwave oven, put it in the back of your house somewhere, you run your house. You run all its electricity needs. You don't need to pull anything off the national grid. Well, if you put that into the third world, you're going to revolutionize the third world. That is as much a threat to some people as it is a benefit.
And as far as the Hutchison effect goes, I'm rather disturbed that the U.S. government and aerospace corporations has it. The concerns of it being used for an evil force by the military-industrial complex disturbs me quite a bit. I like to see it used for the helping of nature, because there's so much pollution going on with nature. Mankind tends to want to fight each other all the time with wars.
Probably a pretty dope dude. This video is from Adam Slides 2, by the way. And this one is Alec Schall, S-C-H-A-A-L. I try to make it a point of pointing out who these videos are from, so go give them a follow, guys. For real, they do good content. I wouldn't put it in my videos if it wasn't a good content.
Back in 1943, during World War II, the government was experimenting with technology to make battleships like this invisible. One of the weirdest projects was called the Philadelphia experiment, which involved this ship called the USS Eldridge, which was a destroyer escort ship. And the goal was to make this ship invisible by manipulating the gravitational and electric magnetic fields to create the invisibility cloak on the ship. They bring the ship out and the crew starts the experiment. Right as they were doing it, the ship has a green cloak around it and then disappears. So the ship reappears 200 miles away. So it actually was successful, and the ship did disappear or turn invisible or teleport. And then it returned back to the harbor. When the crew returned with the ship, that's when it got really weird, because there was accounts of a lot of the crew being sick, nauseous, dead, missing body parts, driven crazy, and just not well. And the craziest one, some were melded into the ship and actually fused inside the ship. Now, this is a pretty controversial story. A lot of people don't believe it. A lot of people think that it was actually a gas leak and the crew was hallucinating. How did all the crew have the same hallucination? There is evidence of documents being missing, government making efforts to bury this experiment and not talk about it. There's a lot of accounts from Navy families and witnesses saying that they knew people or were a part of it, and that they saw the green flare and the crew being messed up. I was looking into what happened to the ship after. It was transferred to Greece and then destroyed and eventually sold for scraps. Do you think this actually happened, or is this a conspiracy?
So yeah, well-known alleged conspiracy theory, but seems like every day another 4 or 5 conspiracy theories come true. So I'm just gonna read you this comment that's in the TikTok comments, so take it with a grain of salt, but it says, my uncle was a scientist who worked on the Philadelphia experiment, like said in the video. My grandpa told me that he told him he was working with the military to invent invisibility. By doing so, they actually discovered how to do it, but the problem was that the boat moved at a slightly different time than the people. Theory was, let's say that it takes 3 seconds to get to A to B. What if we can cut 2 seconds off? So he found a way to teleport it, essentially using vibration. I don't know the whole story, and I'm sure people are going to say that I'm lying, but this is real, and technology has improved insanely since then. So, like I said, take it with a grain of salt. But, you know, interesting. And there are lots of people with stories like that from their uncles, grandfathers, whatever. The Woodward effect / Mach effect, discovered in 1990, or proposed by Jim Woodward in 1990 as a reactionless thruster, theorized to enable a warp drive via a large negative mass warping space-time. Large negative mass and a small point theorized to create a stable, traversable wormholes. The Alcubierre drive. And I did have to look up how to say that, and I did have to look up what that was. I've never heard of it before. And I know a lot of this sounds like sci-fi, but guys, I've been saying for a long time the universe is probably a lot closer to Star Wars than it is the Bible. So, you know, how about that Jay-Z news, huh? Ooh. All right, so first let's try to get an understanding of what Mach effect even is. This is an educational video. Probably won't include all of it, but maybe we can get an understanding.
Okay, let's get into the weeds here. We're going to look at the work of a physicist named James Woodward and his super controversial idea, the Mach effect thruster. This is a proposed engine that, if, and it's a big if it actually works, it would change everything. So, to get your head around Woodward's engine, you first have to understand this thing called Mach's principle. It's a profound, kind of trippy idea. It suggests that an object's inertia, its resistance to being moved, isn't just some property it has on its own. It's actually a direct result of its connection to every single other thing in the entire universe. So here's the mind-blowing part. If your inertia is the universe pushing back on you, what if you could somehow get the universe to push you forward? That right there is the core of the Mach effect. It's a way to create a reactionless drive. And if it's real, it doesn't just give us a new engine, it completely rewrites the book on stuff like inertia and conservation of momentum.
Oh, I think that kind of explains it pretty well. Yeah, it's basically using the rotating mass and then doing it the opposite. Something like that. Basically, you can go really, really fast. So Dr. Ning Li and Doug Torr with AC gravity of the 1990s. So the University of Alabama Huntsville scientist who theorized a magnetic field applied to a superconductor will align ion spins to produce gravitomagnetic and gravitoelectric effect. Big words. Don't understand them all. Let's watch some TikToks. Before we do though, she had a 1999 Popular Mechanics article, which is still available, and she did a collaboration with NASA in 1996. So she had a NASA Marshall Space Flight Center collaboration in 1996, and she left the University of Alabama at Huntsville and founded AC Gravity LLC in 1999, then to be rewarded a $500,000 Department of Defense contract in 2001. This comes from Ghost Toast Spooks. He does really good content. I like his stuff a lot. He actually does like a 9-minute version about Dr. Ning Li, but we will not be watching that one today, so you can go check it out.
Maybe anti-gravity is closer than we think. Dr. Ning Li was a brilliant physicist, one of the few daring enough to challenge the laws of gravity. In the 1990s, she shocked the scientific world with her research on anti-gravity, rotating ions, superconductors, and a theory that hinted at the impossible. Years later, she left academia to pursue her dream of creating anti-gravity technology through her company AC Gravity LLC. The U.S. Department of Defense took notice, funding her work and shrouding her research in secrecy. Then, in 2003, she suddenly disappeared from public view. Rumors began to swirl. Some claimed she was working on classified government projects, hidden away in secretive labs. Others whispered she had been approached by foreign governments, lured back to China with promises or threats. Years later, her son revealed the truth. Ning Li had suffered a tragic car accident, leaving her with brain damage and Alzheimer's. She withdrew from the world before. Maybe anti-gravity is closer than we think. Dr. Ning Li was a brilliant physicist, one of the few daring enough to challenge the laws of gravity. In the 1990s, she shocked the scientific world with her research on anti-gravity, rotating ions, superconductors, and a theory that hinted at the impossible. Years later, she left academia to pursue her dream of creating anti-gravity technology through her company AC Gravity LLC. The U.S. Department of Defense took notice, funding her work and shrouding her research in secrecy. Then, in 2003, she suddenly disappeared from public view. Rumors began to swirl. Some claimed she was working on classified government projects, hidden away in secretive labs. Others whispered she had been approached by foreign governments, lured back to China with promises or threats. Years later, her son revealed the truth. Ning Li had suffered a tragic car accident, leaving her with brain damage and Alzheimer's. She withdrew from the world before her death in July 2021. Her groundbreaking research left unfinished, her dreams silenced. But what did she uncover before she vanished? And was she truly the victim of a simple accident? Or is her demise potentially the result of something far darker? A scientist on the brink of changing the world. What happened to Ning Li, and what secrets did she take to the grave? For the full story, come say hello on YouTube.
Yeah, like I said, definitely go check out Ghost Toast. He's dope. He does really good content. And honestly, I've only ever followed him on TikTok, so I'm gonna have to check out his YouTube channel myself. And a lot of you may recognize this voice.
Then Ning Li disappeared. What happened was the military contractors got anti-gravity to work, and they wanted the technology all to themselves. After working at the Center for Space Plasma and Aeronomic Research, Dr. Ning Li started her own anti-gravity research company, AC Gravity. In the early 1990s, she published research papers on anti-gravity. This drew attention from the U.S. government.
And then everything went downhill.
Yep. In 2001, Ning Li received a grant from the U.S. Department of Defense for over $400,000 to continue anti-gravitic research. Then, Ning Li disappeared. Now, some people think she returned to China to work for them, but others say she was caught up with her work at the DoD. Some family members recall that she seemed extremely stressed during that time. She used to love her research, but she did not like working for the DoD. But in 2014, 13 years later, Ning Li reappeared out of nowhere.
I didn't see that coming.
And then she was hit by a car, suffered permanent brain damage. Ning Li's whereabouts during those missing years is still a mystery. But my guess is the Department of Defense knows exactly where she was. But they'll never tell, and nobody's gonna ask.
Ain't that the truth? So what did happen to Ning Li? There are Reddit discussions about it. As you could see, there's tons of TikToks about it. It's a well-known case. Could have just been an accident. I'll leave it at that. The Poklednov effect, and we are almost to the end of this, guys, I promise. The Poklednov effect in the 1990s to 2000s was a rotating superconductor producing a gravity shielding. There was a 2001 patent submitted. Collaboration with NASA MSFC again in the early 2000s claimed a 2% reduction in weight. And that's huge when you're talking about space travel. They could reduce their weight by 2%. Widely panned by the community, however, some near replications have been done by Poher. Let's check out a TikTok or two.
1992, a Russian scientist, Eugene Poklednov, who worked at the Tampere University in Finland, accidentally discovered an unusual gravitational shielding effect. Later, this effect was given his name. On that fateful day, Poklednov was working on a device with a superconductive disk rotating in a magnetic field at ultra-low temperatures. The disk was cooled with liquid nitrogen. One day, as one of his colleagues lit up a cigarette in the lab, releasing smoke, Eugene noticed that the smoke above the rotating disk took on the shape of a vertical column. Examining the nature of this phenomenon, he found that the test load positioned above the installation lost 2% of its weight. This very pattern persisted within the column, even when weights were lifted several floors above. The anti-gravity effect was carefully studied and verified by physicists. An article with the results of these studies was accepted by a reputable English journal. However, prior to its publication, the work received an extremely negative response from the scientific community, being labeled as questionable sensationalism. Furthermore, they failed to reproduce the effect in other labs around the world for a long time because the device lacked one critical component, a superconductive ceramic disc with a sufficiently large 12-inch diameter and a specific chemical composition, yttrium barium copper oxide.
He's a Russian ceramic engineer who previously worked at the Institute of Materials Science, Tampere University of Technology, and at the Institute of High Temperature USSR Academy of Sciences. Whatever. So yeah, he created another device. I don't think those videos were of Poklednov, but I think it gives us a pretty good idea of what he was doing. All right, so this guy, this is gonna be another one I say take with a grain of salt. Not to knock his story or anything, but it's a lot, you know? This guy is Dave Rossi. He was once a blue-collar construction worker, but his life took a dramatic turn after an encounter with a mysterious blue plasma-like being. This experience ignited an intense passion for quantum physics, high-voltage experiments, and the untapped possibilities of extended electrodynamics. Got a lot of interesting ideas, but he talks about Poklednov here, so I just figured I'd throw him in here. And this is with Jesse Michaels again.
I think there may be something there with Poklednov. Forgive me, I have to be careful with regards to what I say about Ning Li, but what I can say about that is that there is a paper that was released by Bob Baker under the MITRE Corporation for one of the high-frequency gravitational wave conferences where you cannot actually access the entire paper, just the abstract introduction, where I'm paraphrasing, but he talked about how Ning Li was able to generate up to 11 kilowatts of gravitational waves, and essentially there were two types of gravity that she had discovered, which was AC gravity and DC gravity. So a static type of gravity and then an alternating current type of gravity under the notion that gravity comes from the the topological displacement of matter topologies, meaning essentially you can use electromagnetism in a certain format in which would then, at the next level above, through the curving of space-time, allow you to control gravity electromagnetically.
Whoa, wait, explain that.
Yeah, once again, that was Jesse Michaels doing the interview there, and then that guy's name was Dave Rossi, R-O-S-S-I, if you guys want to go look into him yourself. I did watch the rest of that interview. It is really good. It's really interesting. A lot of stuff way above my head, because once again, I don't understand physics at all, pretty much. But, you know, that's why I'm doing this video, because I'm trying to get a little bit better of an understanding of it. We're seeing how it's going. But, you know, learning. All right, so we got a good understanding of Bukletnov, I think. Then you have Tor, Jose Vargas, and Tamir Dada. This is 3 different guys. In 2001, they created a gravity beam generator while working at the University of South Carolina. The creation of an inhomogeneous electric field with 2 asymmetric hollow concentric electrodes. More big words. Experimental quantum gravity website, still online. I tried to find that, and I can't find it now. Not to say it wasn't online when Amy Eskridge presented this in December of 2018. Tor's present work still unclear. And then we're going to skip through a little bit because we're running long. But Ning Li, Popular Mechanics article, no longer available. Not exactly true. I don't know if she maybe had some issues with Googling, but it was on the Wayback Machine and a few other places. It was pretty easy to find. Doug Tor, University of South Carolina, research never made public. So he was one of these, the Tor, Jose Vargas, Tamir Dada. There's not a whole lot on that. That's why we kind of skipped through that. His still actually, I believe his research has never been made public. At least I couldn't find it. Bukletnov was ousted by the University of Tampere in 1997. Giovanni Modenesi, Wikipedia page deleted. I couldn't find his actual Wikipedia page, but he is on everybodywiki.com, which does everybody have a wiki page? I'm gonna have to search for myself. If we all have a wiki page on here, that would be crazy. Giovanni Modenesi is an Italian physicist and professor at the Free University of Bolzano, Italy. He is known for his friendship and collaboration with the well-known Russian gravity shielding researcher Eugene Bukletnov. He wrote several papers between 1996 and 2001 attempting to provide a theoretical framework for Bukletnov's reported gravity shielding observations. That's interesting. So they were kind of trying to work together while also they were friends. Now getting closer to the present day, you have Claude Poher in the 2000s to today. He modified the Bukletnov effect, a propelled force claiming to result from a discharge of a YBCO disk. Universons theory, universons maybe, probably because everything else protons, and it was tested at NASA as well in 2015. And getting into Morningstar and applied physics, Paul Murad and John Brandenburg, the modified Searle machine with gravitoelectric magnetism theory, and they claimed a 7% reduction, so they're advancing old theories to make it even better, as you do. Then getting into Boeing Phantom Works of the 2010s, doing gravity research for advanced propulsion program, admitted to in 2014. Bukletnov as a collaborator, maybe? TR-3B Black Triangle Alien Reproduction Vehicle is the result, and I believe that's a picture of the Black Dorito, the Black Triangle. It's got a bunch of different names, but it's a proposed black budget project that's been happening for like 30, 40 years at this point at Phantom Works. And I think actually, let me just read this. Mechanism resembles the Brown generator. You'll remember Brown's gravitator of the 1920s, so it's apparently similar to this. And that's interesting. Oh yeah, I do have a TikTok for this.
Have you ever wondered what Boeing is really up to behind those closed hangar doors? Everyone sees airplanes and rockets, but what they don't see is Phantom Works. It's Boeing's deepest division, where black projects are born, where technology you're not supposed to know about is tested every night. They call it the Skunk Works of the West, but insiders say Phantom Works may go even deeper. Whistleblowers speak of silent triangle craft flying without engines, metamaterials that vanish from radar, pilots trained to interface with their minds, and even anti-gravity vehicles made for another planet. They work on things like Project Aurora X, a hypersonic ghost ship, the Eclipse Wing, a partially invisible aircraft, ZGFT-17, a floating platform that doesn't touch Earth, and something called Mirrorgate, a rumored interdimensional portal. And then there are the employees. In certain corridors, there's a strict rule. Do not look them in the eye. Not a joke, because some of them aren't fully human. Some walk like machines, others move like shadows in humanoid form. Workers report headaches, memory loss, or intense emotional crashes if they stare too long. Who are they? Some say they're enhanced. Some say they're from elsewhere, deep below or far above, and some? They're believed to be synthetic consciousness, living tech walking among the living. And Boeing, they don't just build planes. They build bridges to the next dimension, and not everyone's invited. So next time somebody starts to talk about Boeing and how they just make airplanes think again, this is DeLorean. Remember who you are. Never stop questioning and never stop shining. This is for entertainment purposes only.
Yeah, of course. This is all for entertainment purposes only. That was DeLorean's Truth on TikTok. You can go check him out. some AI stuff, but I think it's used pretty tastefully, I will say. But yeah, Boeing's Phantom Works, doing all the dark stuff, trying to make us the best war machine possible. So some recent declassifications. Declassifications of ATIP documents, the Advanced Aviation Threat Identification Program. You guys may know, if you keep up with the UFO topic and stuff, Lou Elizondo was allegedly headed that up at one point, and then he didn't, and then he did, and then he didn't, and then he didn't. I don't know what's going on with him anymore. The Defense Intelligence Reference Document, Traversable Wormholes, Stargates, and Negative Energy. You guys feel free to go look these up. They exist. Another one, Warp Drive, Dark Energy, and the Manipulation of Extra Dimensions. You guys remember Project Stargate and like astral travel and all that stuff, you know? The future. What is the next step? That is a very good question, Amy. What now? We need theories with a testable hypothesis. Facts. I'm not going to be the one to come up with them, just a heads up. Independently funded research by private interests is required. I mean, hey, we're already 18 billion trillion quazillion dollars in debt. Why not just throw some more government money at it? Promising results always disappear into the classified realm. How do we fix this? That's the part I want to talk about. And that is the end of Amy's slideshow. But we are not done, because we have to talk about the worst part of all of this. Dr. Ning Li is not the only one who has died in this story. Let's look at some messages. These are DMs between Amy Eskridge and a independent UFO researcher. And this is 1246, I believe May 12th. The Israelis, though, holy shit, I personally think that they have been playing both sides between the US and Russia. I recently went to the dentist for my routine cleaning and exam. The hygienist pulled up my dental insurance information to see how often I had dental x-rays covered. She asked me how I liked my job at some company that I had never heard of. I was like, what? She showed me the information on the computer screen. My dental insurance company had my employer listed as an Israeli technology company at the Mammoth Technology Center in Haifa, Israel. WTF. Seems like someone in Israel has been recently requesting my dental records, and they faked an employer address for me in Israel to do it. Jesus, that's just absurd. I can only think of a handful of reasons for a foreign nation state to social engineer their way into obtaining my dental records. None of them are good. I'm not going to read through all of these, but I do want them all in the video. So I'm only going to read a few, but I'm going to scroll through them. Oh, by the way, if you see any report that I most definitely did not. If you see any report that I OD'd myself, I most definitely did not. If you see any report that I killed anyone else, I most definitely did not. Just like Bishop most definitely did not kill Maria and Gopi and Adriel. Just like McClandis sure as F did not blow his own head off with a shotgun. The dominoes are being lined up all over again now. And that's pretty much the last of them. This is Ross Coulthart, a famous UFO researcher and reporter.
I actually spoke to Amy Eskridge. I don't think she killed herself. I do think there's a very high likelihood she was murdered. I've got a very good friend who was a very, very good friend of hers who was being sent emails by her in the months prior to her death, where she genuinely feared that somebody was trying to hurt her or kill her. And I've got photographs, harrowing photographs of burns that she allegedly suffered from some kind of directed energy weapon that she believes was directed at her from the street through the window of the office that she was working in. They are harrowing images showing burns on her hands where literally there's a red mark that starts just from her hands, and it's as if her hands across a keyboard were being irradiated with something. I do think that the instance of the Amy Eskridge case is quite extraordinary. There's a whole lot of unexplained stuff. She was a big drinker, but I don't think she killed herself. I truly don't think she killed herself. I'm sorry if that upsets the family, but I think she was a wonderful human being.
Amy Eskridge, 2022, suicide by gunshot. She was 34. Y'all remember this in December?
The man leading America's largest fusion energy lab was shot to death in his home, and there's not any suspects or any motive of why this man would be shot in his own home. Nuno Loureiro was a 47-year-old Portuguese physicist who went on to become the MIT director of Plasma Science and Fusion Center. What he was trying to do was create clean fusion energy. Basically, he was trying to create power that was sustainable and had zero carbon footprint, and he must have been on to something. Neighbors are saying that last night around 8:30 p.m., they heard 3 loud bangs in their Brooklyn apartment building. And when they went to investigate, one of the neighbors found him in the foyer, shot to death, and he was declared dead at Boston Hospital this morning around 11 a.m. And this wasn't the first plasma fusion scientist that was murdered. There was another one murdered in 2004. Now, according to the articles I found, that murder was solved as some sort of dispute with tenants, but it seems quite odd, doesn't it? As of now, there's no motive, there's no suspects, and all that's left is the 3 kids and the wife that he left behind, and a lot of questions. What happened to this man?
That was the People's Sick Day with underscores in between each word. Nuno Loureiro was 47 years old and died in just 2025. It was eventually linked to the Brown University shooter. The official narrative is that it was an old classmate and then that person suicided as well. The motive was that he was allegedly jealous over their success. But in doing the research for this video, I started to come across quite a few different names of people that have died mysteriously. And we don't have to watch a TikTok on every single one because this video is already getting close to over an hour long. But feel free to go look up some of these yourself. I'm just going to hit some highlights. We already know about Amy Eskridge. We know about Nuno. There was also Dr. Ning Li earlier. Don't forget, she got hit by a random car. I don't know, just seems weird. Also, Barely Sociable does a really good video on Ning Li. Definitely go check that out. There was Dr. John Mullen, who is a nuclear physicist and worked for McDonnell Douglas, one of the biggest military contractors in the world. He was poisoned by cyanide. The suspect, his longtime girlfriend, was later found dead just before her arrest. Circumstances surrounding Dr. Mullen's death remain a mystery. Then there was Rory Johnson. You all may remember he created a cold fusion laser-activated magnetic motor that produced 525 horsepower and would power a large bus for about 100,000 miles on about 5 kilograms of deuterium and gallium. I don't know how to make it, but he did. Greyhound Bus Lines had entered into a deal with him to receive a motor powered by his technology for their fleet of buses. They tried to contact him for over a year to silence, only to find out that he had died unexpectedly, which was odd since he was only in his early 50s and was reported to be in robust health. Then there's Eugene Mallove, who's a cold fusion scientist, exposed MIT and the Department of Energy cover-up of anomalous excess heat in experiments, and he was the editor of Infinite Energy magazine. He was beaten to death during an apparent robbery outside of his childhood home. 2 men were convicted in 2013. The whistleblowing he was doing was on suppressed fusion tech that was threatening the oil and nuclear industries. Then you have Dmitry Petronov. He developed a plasma battery that powered his home for 14 months. In 2010, he went to a bakery and was never seen again. Then there's Zachary Warfield. He also developed a plasma battery. He visited with Petronov before his death and died later the next year in a strange boating accident in Washington, D.C. Then there's Aria Degeus, ARIEDEGEUS, if you want to look it up. They patented a free energy technology based on the zero-point field in 2007. On his way to meet investors, he was found dead in his car at the airport. Then there's Mark Tomian. 2009, at age 52, created the Star Drive device, alleged anti-gravity zero-point energy generator. He claimed there was free energy in vacuum fluctuations. There's a link to the entire PDF of his book explaining this technology in the description of this video. If you're smarter than me, you might be able to figure it out. Then you have Stefan Marinov, who was doing research into free energy technologies. He fell out of a window before he could develop a successful prototype. Stan Myers developed a water-powered car, died a few years later, claiming running out of a restaurant that he was poisoned. Then there's the Marconi Scientist Cluster, which it would be a whole video in and of itself, but I encourage you to go look into it. And do you remember Malaysian Airlines flight MH370? Lots of conspiracy theories around that one, but I know for a fact because I've checked the passenger listings myself, considered doing a video on it a while ago, and just didn't, but did a lot of research into it. There were a handful of scientists on board that plane that were working on some sort of cloaking device technology. You can go look into this yourself. They had a patent for it and everything. They were an Austin-based company, and it's alleged that they might have been turning ship to go work for China. Or maybe they weren't. Who knows? Now, Amy Eskridge was allegedly getting hit by these energy weapons. She was being attacked by these energy weapons. She was working on this stuff. You would think she would kind of know what she was talking about. But energy weapons have long been a topic of debate in the conspiracy theory realms. Now, if you're as well versed as I have been in conspiracy theory land, then you would know directed energy weapons and energy weapons of all kinds have been theorized for many years at this point. That's what Amy Eskridge was claiming to be attacked by. You guys may remember from a few years back and being talked about again recently, Havana syndrome being a thing, a conspiracy theory, but is it? Now, this is from a 60 Minutes interview from last year. It was posted April 1st of 2024, which That'd be crazy if they posted this as like a April Fool's joke, but it's not. It's an actual interview, so.
She is the wife of a Justice Department official who was with the embassy in Tbilisi. She's a nurse with a PhD in anesthesiology. On October 7th, 2021, she says that she was in her laundry room when she was blindsided by a sound.
As I'm reaching into the dryer, I am completely consumed by a piercing sound that I can only describe as when you listen to a movie and the main character is also consumed by the sound after a bomb goes off. That is similar to the sound that I heard, and it just pierced my ears, came in my left side, felt like it came through the window into my left ear. I immediately felt fullness in my head and just a piercing headache. And when I realized that I needed to get out of the laundry room, I left the room and went into our bedroom next door and projectile vomited in our bathroom.
And then this one explains it a little bit better than they talked about, but she got and gave her firsthand experience of it.
Is Havana syndrome. Mysterious bouts of vertigo, confusion, and memory loss have afflicted U.S. government officials and their families overseas and in the U.S. for nearly 10 years. It's believed by some investigators to be caused by a secret, unseen weapon that fires a high-energy beam of microwaves or ultrasound, which according to a major medical study, causes brain injury. The first publicly reported cases were from Americans assigned to the U.S. Embassy in Cuba in 2016. They say their families were struck frequently and at night. And one official said he saw his kids thrashing around in their beds. Others called it a paralyzing attack. Many experienced ear pain, nausea, dizziness, and vision problems. 60 Minutes has been investigating Havana syndrome for 5 years. More than 100 officials or family members have unexplained persistent symptoms.
What we found was, we thought, clear evidence of an injury to the auditory and vestibular system of the brain. Everything starting with the inner ear, where humans perceive sound and sense balance, and then translate those perceptions into brain electrical signals.
Incidents have been reported in several countries, and one person reported being hit outside the White House. But who is behind these attacks? Greg Edgreen, a now retired Army Lieutenant Colonel who ran the Pentagon investigation into Havana syndrome, told 60 Minutes he believes U.S. officials are being attacked by Russia, but that the official threshold to prove it was set impossibly high, because he says the country doesn't want to face some very hard truths, like the existence of possible failures to protect Americans.
You know, if my mother had seen what I saw, she would say it's the Russians, stupid.
National studies on Havana syndrome have not confirmed this.
Oh, is the Russians? I mean, it might be. I don't know, dude. But what's crazy about Havana syndrome is that for a long time it was a conspiracy theory, and then all these government officials started getting hit with it, and then 60 Minutes started investigating, and then it was kind of taken seriously. Well, the United States government just came right out and said it. The Department of War CTO Twitter account said, yes, the Department of War has directed energy weapons. Yes, we are scaling them. And then they did a couple other stupid little graphics with it, as if it's all some big meme. Dude, I won't get started. But, so yeah, apparently we're just coming out and saying we have energy weapons now. I'm just going to throw this out there. You guys remember that Reddit thread that said, don't be surprised if you start hearing about advanced energy systems in the very near future? Just saying, go back and watch that video. I don't know, man. I hope that's not right. Or is there a race of Arids on another planet right now, bro? Oh, I know it doesn't sound like it makes sense. Go watch that video. You'll get it. And then last week, it was being reported. Here, let me just pull that up. And look, I'm going to say this, preface this with, this feels 100% like propaganda, because I don't know if you guys saw the reports that were coming out after we went and kidnapped the Venezuelan president, Nicolas Maduro, but all the forces were allegedly saying they didn't know what hit them, they couldn't even fire their weapons back, all their systems were disabled, they were throwing up and bleeding out of their nose, and they just couldn't even function, and that's why they got hit so hard, and they just had bodies on bodies piled up down there. Like, that all sounds like classic propaganda, because like, look, there wasn't a video, nobody was saying that. It was like some stuff being reported up through the ranks. Some soldier said this and that gave it to the media. It feels like classic propaganda. But then Trump comes out and says that they have a discombobulator that they used. And it's just, oh, could we get a better name? Because that's a scary weapon, bro. He's not my bro, fuck that dude. So have you figured out what my conspiracy theory is yet? If you think you know it, go drop it in the comments. I'm not gonna wait, because it's a video and that's not how this works. You can pause it if you need some time to type it out or whatever. Yeah, it seems pretty obvious to me that there is some sort of dark war going on at the upper echelons of energy weapons manufacturers, or weapons manufacturers as a whole. Everybody's trying to figure out how to use energy weapons before everybody else does, so that we can dominate. Once again, technology is being used for war and killing people, as opposed to, you know, giving the world free energy, getting away from fossil fuels and the oil and power systems that we currently live under. You know, why do that when you could just build a really high-powered laser to blow somebody up. Like, look, I don't know if you guys have been watching the news, but conspiracy theorists are up right now. I think the score is about 108-2 or something like that on conspiracy theories that are real versus haven't been proven. Those new Epstein docs are crazy, bro. But back to this topic. You know, there were a lot of conspiracies around when the Hawaii fires were happening that maybe they used some energy weapons to start some fires down there so that some billionaires could go in and buy up a bunch of land for really cheap. I haven't really kept up with it, but I don't know that that didn't happen. Of course, Blackstone, along with its partners, has agreed to purchase Alexander and Baldwin, a major landowner in Hawaii, for $2.3 billion. I don't want to say everything's a conspiracy, but geez. I don't know, man. It's hard to know what to believe anymore. Just about anything seems possible. And I know one thing, I certainly won't be coming up with any gravity machines in the near future. So I guess I'll put it like this. My theory is that there is some sort of intelligence war going on for this technology, synergy technology. And anytime anyone comes close to cracking the case, I always forget it does that. And anytime it comes close, the US government and potentially others have already figured it out. And anytime an independent researcher comes close, they get offed. Got that right? Kind of what it seems like. If you got the theory right before I got to it, then let me know in the comments. You know of any other inventors that had mysterious deaths or vanished mysteriously? Then drop that in the comments too, and I'll check it out. Don't forget to subscribe because it makes my heart warm and fuzzy when I watch that little number go up, and drop a like for me. It does help spread the video to more people. This was a long one, and it's probably going to be a lot of editing, so I hope a lot of people watch it. Hope I kept it interesting enough, but thank you for tuning in. I appreciate you. I love you. So until next time, seek the truth.